The Silent is my favorite character in Slay the Spire 2, and even early on, I had several successful runs, including a poison build that was my first win, and a shiv build that absolutely annihilated bosses. But then, as I pushed up Ascensions, I started losing more. And especially once I got to like Ascension 6-7, things started getting noticeably tougher. But I learned a lot along the way. And so I'm going to share everything I learned so that you can win more runs. Starting with the first big thing, which is getting past hurdles in Act 1. Then, talking about good cards to look out for, because very often, looking out for good cards is more valuable than a specific build archetype. But, third of all, I am going to talk about build archetypes, a little bit on how they work, and some stuff that makes them tick. And so, if any of that sounds interesting to you, then do stick around for the rest of the video. Also, if you want to see more of my thoughts on Slay the Spire 2 and other games, get subscribed. Since the early game, and your choices in Act 1 are especially important, I wanted to give an example. So, it all begins by meeting Niao and choosing a blessing. In this case, there's 3 options. Scroll boxes, lose all gold, which is a significant resource, and choose from a pack of 3 cards. This can be good, can be bad. Booming Conch, at the start of Elite Combats, draw 2 additional cards. Not as good on the Silent, because you already have Ring of a Snake, and so drawing 4 cards, Lead Paperweight, choose one of 2 colorless cards. Sometimes awesome, sometimes mediocre. But there's also no gold cost for this, so that's what I'm going to go with. I think the card packs can absolutely pay off, but it's a risk, and it's a risk that leaves exposed. In this case, I'm going to go with thinking ahead. Draw 2 cards, put 1 card back. This can be very good because you get to set up for things like enemy is invulnerable and you draw your finisher. Well, guess what? You can put it back on top of your deck, play it next turn. Next up, pathing. The thing to do is not to just click stuff immediately. It's to look ahead and plan. Now, in particular, you want to get extra elites, but ideally you'd like to fight them later in the run rather than earlier in the run, because early in the run, like right here, this elite is really dangerous. Sure, maybe I get some awesome card rewards here, but if I don't, it's going to be bad. So, in general, later is better, and especially in this latter half here, because the map's divided in half, before the treasure chest and after the treasure chest. Also, if you can hit things like shops and rest points, you can upgrade cards. So here, there's 1, 2 rest points, meaning I can upgrade 2 cards. Over here, same thing. And then I could go 1, 2 into elites, or 1 rest point 2. So that path's actually really good. This is looking like a very good path. This path also gets 2, but skips the rest point. This path gets 2, but skips the rest point. Doesn't pick up anything of value. Like if there was a shop here, I could see that argument. But the shop is here. So actually, the best thing to do, go up to here. Probably not buy too much. Probably can't buy a relic in this shop, but there's some very good card rewards. Then go this way. And if things are going good, up like this. If things are going bad, sadly, no option to branch off. The ideal is having a path to branch off, so I guess just cry. First enemy. It's going to attack for 11 damage, so neutralize. Now it's 8. Play Survivor. Oh, look. Now the last 2. Attack, attack. I might as well do this, and it doesn't matter what I put back. I was hoping I could pull out something else of interest. Alright, now it's attacking for 8. I will block twice. This enemy doesn't really ramp up, it doesn't attack too much, so there's no reason to take excess damage. This is the turn where it would have been nice to have more strikes, but hey, it is what it is. This turn, just full block. It will effectively take 7 damage because its block goes away. And this is the turn to kill it, because it's exposed. Just like that. And now I'm offered 3 different card rewards. Backflip, which is gain 5 block, draw 2 cards. Good card, doesn't give me damage. Leading Strike, which is basically deal 11 damage. Poison Stab, which is deal 9 damage, but then an additional 3 damage over the next turns. This can combo into the Shiv archetype. This sort of works with a Poison archetype. And I'm going to go with this, just because Poison Stab is pretty good, but I think this is slightly better. Okay, Endless Conveyor Belt. Can be very good. Problem is, I have a shop coming up, and I would rather have the guaranteed shop rewards than gamble a few times here. Could be a misplay. Honestly, sometimes you get lucky, you get jackpots, you get really good stuff. Okay, thinking ahead, I'm going to fish. Leading strike on the back fish, and then attack. That way I kill it. These fish have a very simple pattern. They attack for 7, then they buff themselves, then they do 3 times 3, and then they go back to attacking for 7. So here I've lowered it to 2 times 3. I took 2 damage, still, +1 net defense. Now I do this, and I do this. I will fully block everything, and it's at 13 health. Then strike. There we go. Fully blocked up. Killed the enemy. I can get backstab, slice, or prepared. Again, long-term, prepared is the best. I could go into something like draw discard with prepared. I could combo with a sly card. But I don't have those right now. And backstab is a good chunk of damage. So for now, I'm going to get backstab. Again, I'm going to weaken this. Strike. Use a backstab. Strike. Survivor. Discard a block. And here I think I just kill it. Easy enough. Alright. Was really hoping for an attack, but since there isn't, I'll go with acrobatics. It lets me fish through my deck. Now, if I was really worried here, if I thought, ooh, I don't want to die, what I could have done is gone this way and around. But I'm full health. I haven't taken any damage. So I would rather fight the elite. I'm probably going to take some damage here. Going to pop a strength potion. And in terms of this guy, there's no point in being super aggressive, because it only takes 20 damage per turn. So here, I just block. Okay, neutralize, that's good. That's its big attack, so perfect timing. And again, block up, take no damage. Would have liked to do 6 more there, but that's fine. This is the turn to do big damage. Again, limited. Okay, this is the turn for big blocks. Sadly, I don't have big blocks. So this is where I take damage. Do I kill it? Not quite. So I will double block, and now I need any offensive card. I'm pretty sure I have nothing in my deck side of neutralize that doesn't kill it, which of course means that's what I drew. Let's go fishing. Okay. And oh look, accuracy. Accuracy is the Shiv archetype. Now, Blur, very good card. It allows block to persist. Bouncing Flask, honestly, I'm not in love with Bouncing Flask. It works if you get Snecko Skull. If you don't get Snecko Skull, not a big a fan. But I'm going to take accuracy. Now, any card in the Shiv archetype is more valuable. And to maximize that value, I'm immediately going to smith it up. This is now +6 damage on every Shiv, which is basically like upgrading every Shiv card. Kinda, sorta. Now in the shop. What am I looking for? Well, I'm going to check the neutral cards. Some of these are really good. Flash of Steel is an example. Noxious Fumes is actually a good card. If I'd been building towards Poison, I'd be taking that. But because I'm building towards Shiv, I'm going to take Blade Dance. Now, I could spend all of my gold. The thing is, I know another shop is coming up here. And I would rather have more money for that shop than take, say, a Flash of Steel, which it's okay. It's solid, but it's not amazing. But if I had more gold, I could have gotten something like Sparkling Rouge, which is significantly better in my opinion than a Flash of Steel. And I don't think I'm desperate enough to take any of the potions, though if I had like a single big attack, might take a gigantification. For now, instead, I'm just going to remove a strike from my deck because strikes and defends are generally the weakest cards. And here I'm going to upgrade Acrobatics so I can fish in my deck better. Honestly, there's a couple other options that I probably should have talked about. Neutralize is a pretty good one, and Survivor is a good one. Ooh, Happy Flower. Okay, now I take on an elite. This is a multi-target elite. It's a bit dangerous. I'm going to start with this. That reduces its damage to 0 for a turn. Bonk that. I'm not going to play Blade Dance. Because as much as I would like to play Blade Dance here, they've all blocked up anyway. And they were always going to do that. So I would rather just block up instead and try to draw my accuracy so I can maximize the value. Or at the very least, play it on a turn where they're not going to just, block. Again, hit that one. I want it as low as possible. I could fish for accuracy here, but I think it's better to block and chip away at 2 of these. This fight gets significantly easier when you kill one. But, oh boy, does it hurt. Okay. Now, thinking ahead, this costs me nothing. And I will actually bury the defend. So, this is slightly more damage. As you can see, 10 damage. Kills. Now I block up. And I punch that one because it is the weakest one that has also been upgraded. And this is where if I have Blade Dance, it is time to Blade Dance. Oh look, a Blade Dance. So, punch, punch, punch. And then neutralize here. I could get a little damage with a strike, but I think it's better to block up. I'll take just a little more damage. The good news is, I have a lot of ways to kill on my next turn. Yes, perfect. So, to not waste damage, that kills there. This kills here. And I take the 7. And that's the elite down. Pounce is actually a decent early card. It's 12 damage, but you get to play a skill for free. So, like, it's 12 damage plus 5 block, or 12 damage plus 8 block, or 12 damage plus draw 4 cards, discard 1 card. But at this point, I don't think it's what I want. Dagger Throw isn't what I want either. Backflip's tempting, but I already have the Acrobatics to dig, and Acrobatics Plus does a better job of it. It doesn't give a block, but it does a better job of digging, so that's what I'm going to go with. Ooh. See, this is where things get risky. The smart move is to just nab a relic and leave. The risky move is to say, I can take them. As you'll notice, especially risky when one of them opens with a punch for 14. Because I can't just neutralize that. Let's see. But can I kill? We'll do that for damage. 10, 20, 30. Yes. See, if it punches for 14, but you just do more damage, it doesn't matter. Here, though, no way. So, I do that. When I punch, it is going for 10. I'll dig with Acrobatics. Oh, that's perfect. I neutralize. This reduces its damage down. Wait, did I? No, I didn't make a mistake. I was like, I don't think I could kill it anyway. But no, I'd be 1 damage short of killing, so blocking was correct. I am notorious for doing that, though. And yes, you should try to calculate things out. Okay. So, Strangle is actually decent if comboed with Shivs. That would be okay. But I don't really feel like I need it at the moment. So, I'm going to give a pass. Here, I will rest up. Regain some health. I probably won't need to rest for a boss if I play things right here. Ooh, and I am going to use Blessing of the Forge. That's 2 weak. Shivs deal additional damage. Big ol' spike of damage. Let's see. Do I want to maximize this and take a little damage? Yes, I think I do. Because this guy gets stunned for a turn, and then debuffs for a turn when he goes below 70. So I want to get him as close to 70 without going over. And then, yes, pull the Blade Dance. Perfect. So now I do this. Okay, not exactly the card I wanted to draw, but that's fine. Look at that burst of damage. Beautiful damage burst there. This is also why it pays to take damage cards early instead of block cards early. Because damage cards mean the enemy dies. Block cards mean the enemy's often alive. And, oh look, Ricochet. Since I have some discard effects, Ricochet is perfect. Ooh. Alright, so Secret Weapon, not that great with his build. Like, Leading Strike's good. But most of my other cool stuff's actually going to be skills. Up My Sleeve is crazy good. Footwork is also quite good. But I'm not going to have that much money afterwards. So do I want the consistent healing and just take a blood vial? Or do I want, like, Up My Sleeve? I have to take Up My Sleeve because I only have one consistent shiv generator. I should take Footwork as well. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh, actually one more thing. Mazaleth's Gift is a free win. This next boss is going to be so easy as a result. And I immediately upgrade this 4 shivs. Pop a Ritual. Pop Footwork. Yes, perfect. Well, not perfect, actually. Because I can't play both of them. God damn it. Almost perfect. Would have been real sweet to be able to play that. Okay. So, neutralize Blade Dance. Thinking ahead, putting the strike back. But here's the thinking with Portal's move. You know, it would have sucked if I drew Up My Sleeve. But it's okay. I didn't draw it. It's fine. Because I draw it now, which is perfect because the boss is healing. So I get the big burst of damage. Need to kill this guy ASAP. Though I do have the Ship in a Bottle and Fairy in a Bottle, so I literally can't lose this boss fight. Yeah, I know. If you were thinking, oh, 10 stakes, no. I cannot lose this boss fight. But, you know, you can pretend. You can certainly pretend. I am taking a little bit of damage here. And this is a fun combo. So I can do Acrobatics, discarding Ricochet, killing the boss, and then I could have also done Up My Sleeve and, like, bonk, 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 etc. Accidentally played a card because I was demonstrating. Yeah. But now, boss goes boom. I have no block cards. But it's okay, because the Ancient will heal me. I'm totally fine. So, like you just saw in the early game example, having damage in Act 1 is really important. Also, don't just rush to the nearest elite. Yes, elites mean relics. Relics are good. Some relics are even OP. But if you take on an elite too early, you're going to get wrecked. Because here's the thing about the Silent. She has arguably the weakest starting deck because you get an extra strike and an extra defend. And those cards are the worst in the game. This is to make up for the fact that she has extra card draw at the start of her first turn. So, you need to be very careful to look out for strong cards, especially early on. Here's a few examples. Pinpoint. This is a 3-cost card that deals okay damage. Here's the thing. Every time you use a skill, whether that's a defensive skill, like Defend for some block, or an offensive skill like Deadly Poison, its cost goes down by 1. So this is a big damage multiplier because you can just block, 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 pinpoint. You've spent 3 energy for about 15 block and like 17 damage. That's pretty good. Another thing that's pretty good is Precise Cut. This is a 0-cost card that hits ridiculously hard for a 0-cost card, except it loses damage based on things in your hand. Good thing the Silent has a lot of discard effects. So if you play Savior, play out most of your hand, oh look, all of a sudden Precise Cut's doing nearly full damage. Something else to keep an eye out for is Predator. Solid damage, draw 2 extra cards next turn. Not only does this mean you are able to cycle through your deck faster, it also means you are more likely to draw the good stuff that you want, as opposed to more strikes and defense. Dagger Spray itself, maybe not the best damage, but here's the thing to think about. It's an AoE card, it deals 8 damage and it hits twice, means double the scaling off of strength. Alternatively, you can get something like Flick Flack, which is played automatically when you discard it. These are particularly good if you're dealing with something like a Frog Parasite, so I always try to have some sort of AoE option. Echoing Slash is the best, but it's also a rare, so maybe a little bit harder to get. Last but not least, a couple of honorable mentions I found helpful. Leg Sweep, it is one of a few defensive cards that I actually actively take. The end result here, enemies are weak, you get a bunch of block. On the other hand, Thrumming Hatchet returns to your hand every time you play it. This is a neutral, colorless card, so sometimes you get it in the shop, most of the time you're probably not going to. If you do, it will carry your Act 1. I beat Ascension 8 because a Thrumming Hatchet carried my Act 1. So sometimes getting that one really good high damage card in the early game is actually more important than your end game build, because if you die in Act 1, it doesn't matter what you might have gotten in Act 3. Something else to keep in mind are specific dangerous enemies and planning for them. So in Act 2, the elites are pretty darn rough. You have the Entomancer, the Decamillipede. These things can end your run pretty easily. On the Decamillipede, one of the things that I like doing is actually burning down one of the segments as quickly as possible. Yes, it will regenerate. That's fine. I mean, if I get lucky, I will just kill the other 2 segments, but even if I don't, that's okay. Because on my next turn, I will burn down a second segment and hopefully lower the third segment's health considerably. That way on the next turn, there's 2 segments, one at 25, one at low health. And I'll finish those off, thus bringing the fight to a close. With the Entomancer, I'm going to be honest, sometimes this fight sucks. It just depends on your deck. If you're playing Shivs, it's pretty bad. If you're playing Poison, specifically skill-based Poison or Sea Wave Poison, actually not a big deal because you're not hitting it and generating those cards that fill your deck, the Dazes. But one thing I found very helpful on the Entomancer, when it only has 1 stack of a buff, hit it as many times as possible. As long as it doesn't actively kill you because it hits you so many times and you're taking so much unblocked damage, hit it as many times as possible. Then, when it has 2 and 3 stacks, try to set up for 1 turn where you kill it. This will not be possible with all decks. Sometimes you're going to die because of the mistakes you made earlier in the run. But if you have a strong enough deck and you can set up for that 1 turn kill, it is far more effective than doing some chip damage if it's at, like, let's just say 40 health. You will get so many debuffs, your deck will be filled with so many dazes, that you'll just die before you actually draw the last card you need to kill it. Here are a few cards that I tend to look out for on the Silent. First up, Afterimage. It is free block. Okay, I guess it costs 1 energy once, but it's more or less free block. Even if you're only playing 3 cards in a turn, it's still really good. The second thing is Footwork. This is a little bit worse than Afterimage, because you do have to play block cards to get a value, but it's still very good. Then there's Escape Plan. This is free block and free card draw. The only time you're punished is on something like the Hunter-Killer. If you're fighting the Hunter-Killer, it's sort of like the Entomancer. You have to do as much damage as possible early on before he debuffs you. Then, after that, try to set up for 1 turn kills. Try to use things like damaging skills that are not affected by strength. If something is not affected by strength, congratulations, it doesn't get debuffed. But on most fights, Escape Plan is just free block sometimes. Also, free card draw, which is good for anything that scales off of card draw. Prepared is draw 2, discard 2. This is surprisingly helpful. Not only does it let you dig deeper in your deck, but if a fight puts statuses in your deck, or puts statuses in your hand, you can use this to discard them without taking any damage. Next up, Piercing Wail. This is a 1 turn all enemies lose a bunch of strength. Basically, enemies skip their turn, which everything in Slay the Spire is about attrition. So this is very powerful. Last up, do not underestimate Sly effects. Maybe you're building a Shiv deck. Maybe you're building a Poison deck. You might not specifically be building into the Sly archetype. Doesn't matter. You have discard effects. You might have Prepared. You might be having Acrobatics. You might be using Survivor. If you're using any of these discard effects, Sly cards are free. Flick Flack is 3 damage. Untouchable, free block. Reflexes, free cards. Tactician, free energy. Ricochet, free damage. Now, if you aren't specifically building it to draw and discard, you shouldn't go overboard with this, but personally, I found, especially as I push up into higher ascensions, it's very helpful to have a couple of Sly cards, because when they go off, they are very good. Also, this is a piece of advice that doesn't just apply to the Silent, but applies more broadly to all the characters. In the early game, you do not have an archetype and should not try to force it. You should take cards that are generically good on their own. But once you get enough pieces to enable an archetype, don't take stuff from a different archetype that has no synergy with your current setup. So for example, if you are playing skill-based poison, don't just randomly grab a Blade Dance. You don't need it, and it does not add any value. Now next up, I'm going to be talking about some build archetypes. These are things like Shiv or Poison, where there's a bunch of cards that all have synergy with each other. For some of these, I have dedicated videos. For some of them, I don't. If there's a dedicated video, it's going to pop up as a card in the top right, and it will also be down below in the description. And so with that said, let's get into it. So first up, there's Shivs. Personally, I think Shivs is the easiest archetype to put together because there are just so many Shiv generators. The basic goal here is to play Shivs, or more accurately, play cards that generate Shivs, then play the Shivs to deal damage to enemies. You can also use this to power up a couple of kill skills, things like Knife Trap or Finisher. And then of course you unload the kill skill and delete the boss. Now in terms of Shiv generation, luckily a fair number of them do other things. There's 3 that I want to call out specifically. Cloak and Dagger, which gives you block. It also generates 2 Shivs, at least if you upgrade it, so this is very good. Hidden Daggers generates 2 Shivs or 2 Shiv plus, but it also lets you discard cards. Remember what I said before about Prepared? Well, it's basically the same thing. Doesn't help you dig through your deck, but it does allow you to trigger Sly effects, and it does allow you to get rid of those statuses. And then there's Fan of Knives, a 2-cost power that generates a bunch of Shivs and causes your Shivs to hit all enemies. This is very good for AoE encounters. Something like the Deca Millipede or Parasite Frog will be annihilated if you have Fan of Knives, and it can be quite tricky if you don't. In terms of kill skills, one way to do it is just get accuracy. Increase the damage of your Shivs enough and kill things. Another way to do it is the card Finisher, which hits an additional time for each attack you've played. Shivs are attacks, so play a bunch of Shivs, Finisher. There's also Knife Trap. This replays all of your exhausted Shivs, so all the Shivs you've played in that combat, they all get replayed, and basically the enemy gets deleted from existence. And of course, because Shivs are a bunch of individual attacks, any relics that give you strength are really good, and any relics that trigger if you played a certain number of attacks, so Kusarigama, Kunai, Shuriken, Ornamental Fan, those are all really good as well. The reason that I say the Shiv archetype is the easiest to put together is because in the early game, you don't need most of the good cards. Just Fan of Knives by itself is kind of enough to make it viable. The power Accuracy, kind of enough to make it viable. The power Phantom Blades, kind of enough to make it viable. In addition, there's a lot of cards that generate Shivs, and most of them are commons. So, very easy to get going, and relatively straightforward to play. Though certain fights, specifically fights that punish you for playing a bunch of cards, do punish Shiv builds. That said, I haven't had too many issues personally. Now next up we have Poison, which I'm going to split up into 2 different archetypes, Skill Poison and Corrosive Wave Poison. First up, Skill Poison, which from a playstyle perspective, I prefer, though I do think Corrosive Wave is the stronger version. The way Skill Poison works is you want to play things like Deadly Poison, Bubble Bubble, or Noxious Fumes, to then stack poisons on the enemy, and play the Accelerant power, and yes I know Noxious Fumes is also a power, it's not technically a skill, I guess I should call this non-attack poison. When you play Accelerant, poison ticks multiple times, enemies die. Snakebite is also something that I found to be pretty nice, because with Retain I can play it when I want, rather than when I draw it. If it didn't have Retain, it would be really bad. Some people do prefer Bouncing Flask. Personally, I've had kind of bad luck with that, where Bouncing Flask will put all of its poison on the enemy if it's already going to die of poison that turn, and none on the enemy if it's just going to be at full health. I would say skill poison is pretty straightforward, and as long as you have a few poison sources, it doesn't have any specific weaknesses, other than the fact that you need enough block to stay alive. Sometimes this means you just play a Mirage and watch stuff die. Most of the time this means you furiously block and hope that you don't take too much chip damage. Which is why the second version, Corrosive Wave Poison, is so much stronger, because this actually relies more on cards from the draw-discard archetype. See, when you play Corrosive Wave, it applies 4 poisons to all enemies. So if you have something like Escape Plan, which is just a good thing to pick up, Prepared, which is a good thing to pick up, Acrobatics, decent, or Backflip, those are all now poison cards. And because each thing is an additional application, enemies with Artifact, your build just doesn't care about that. It will chew through Artifact in one turn, and then immediately start chewing through the enemy health afterwards. Also, because a lot of draw cards discard things, you can take advantage of Sly. Hell, you can even splash something like Speedster to get additional AoE damage from all the cards that you're going to be drawing as part of your poison build. Because of all this, I do think the Corrosive Wave version is the more powerful one. I think it's a little bit more difficult to put together than something like Shiv, but it's probably about on par with the regular version of Poison. That said, you do have to get a Corrosive Wave, and sometimes you're not going to be offered that, so being flexible and building generally good cards that could pivot you into Poison, or could pivot you into Draw Discard, that's always a good plan. And that brings me to the third archetype that I've played and had success with, Draw Discard. This takes advantage of the Sly effect. Now, Sly cards are played when they would be discarded during your turn, not when you end your turn. You don't get to just end your turn and haha, everything's good. But if you have an effect that says, play this, discard a card, something like Preparation, draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, that's where Sly comes in. There's a few damaging effects that you can use. Speedster, as you draw cards, you'll deal damage. Corrosive Wave, like I just mentioned, as you draw cards. Serpent Form, as you play cards. Because you're often using a lot of zero-cost cards, this works pretty well. And Murder, which is also extra damage based on the cards that you've drawn. But really, a lot of your damage is going to be coming from the things you discard, because Sly cards are pretty powerful. In general, I'd say the downside here is outside of the 1-cost Sly cards, all of the others are a really strong version of a card with +1 energy cost. So if a card would normally cost 1, the Sly version is going to cost 2. This is to discourage you from just playing it from your hand by paying the energy cost. Instead, you want to discard it. One very cool thing about the Sly archetype, though, if you get the power Master Planner, whenever you play a skill, it gains Sly. So, from now on, you could do some sort of crazy loop where you play Prepared, it gains Sly, and then next time you play it, you can discard a different Prepared that also has Sly to now draw 2 more cards and discard 2 more cards because you discarded the card that draws the cards. There's some crazy chains that you can do here. I don't want to call it a true infinite though, because it's not like a Ironclad build where turn 1 you play a couple things, you end your turn, the enemy will not get another turn. It usually takes a couple turns to ramp up, especially with Master Planner, but it is very powerful and very fun. And so those are the silent build archetypes, some of the ways they work, cards to look out for. But remember, you don't have to have a build archetype to have a successful build. What do I mean? One of my best runs recently, where I beat Ascension 8, was not a real build. Basically, in Act 1, I got a Thrumming Hammer that carried me through Act 1. Act 2, I didn't get anything good. Or at least, that's what I thought, because I did get 2 After Images, and I also got a bunch of zero-cost cards. So, I would spam Escape Plan, I'd get a bunch of block from After Image, and I'd cycle through my deck. That's pretty much all I got. In Act 3, I got a Serpent's Form. So okay, my game plan is, I hope I draw my Serpent's Form, I cycle through all my 0-cost cards, and I kill stuff really slowly and inefficiently. And yes, it was really slow and inefficient, but I got so much block from the double afterimage, because every time I played a card, 0-cost card, plus 2 block. If it was an escape plan, maybe like plus 5 block, because I'd get the plus 2 and I pull a skill, like escape plan, so plus 3, except it's escape plan so I can play it again, and that's another plus 5 block. I had a ridiculous run, ended up killing the boss super easily. I could out-tank everything. It's one of the first times I'm a silent, but I was just like, oh man, I can just out-tank all this. This is great. Statuses weren't even that much of an issue because I had discard effects. Yeah, it was great. So even if you don't have a build that comes together, if you take good cards, there's still a chance to win. Not going to happen all the time, but it will happen a good amount of the time. And so those are my thoughts on playing the Silent in Slay the Spire 2. Remember, pick your path carefully in Act 1. Look out for good cards in the early game, and look out for good cards generally. By the end, try to get a build archetype together, something like Poison, Shivs, Draw. But if you don't, might still be okay if you have enough good cards. And also, if you want to see more of my thoughts on some of the other characters or Slay the Spire in general, then do be sure to get subscribed, and hey, you made it this far in the video, maybe leave a like while you're down there.